All right, let's wrap up the show with some breakout candidates for this upcoming year. Again, there's an article out there, two articles, I think, on PFF.com right now, breakout candidates for all the NFC teams and for all the AFC teams. But I'm curious who your top 5 breakout candidates would be. Let's alternate. Let's go one each. We'll kind of give a little pitch for each guy, and then we'll wrap up the show.
All right, Quentin Johnston, come on, brother. Let's do it. Wide receiver 1 for the Chargers. He's going to be Herbert's go-to guy. Look, I would love to see Quentin Johnston break out, and I am not just saying this because I had him as a top 30 prospect when he was coming out, but because I do think that he is talented, like independent of me being right as a draft analyst. Like I think that he is a talented player. And even when you watch him at TCU, it felt like his game was incomplete. It felt like it was all flashes and there was not enough consistency. There was not enough dominance in one area to really hang your hat on. And maybe that ultimately becomes the story of why he might not work at the NFL level. You know, he was sort of just this guy who could do a lot of different things for you. He had unique athletic ability for being taller, but he didn't really dominate the way you needed to with his tall receiver. He wasn't quite as fast as you needed him to be. He wasn't as strong as he needed to be at the catch point. Maybe that is the reason why he ultimately fails. But all of those things have showed up at one point, especially in his TCU tape. And so it's like, can we put that all together? Can he sort of surprise everybody at this point and have a massive breakout season this year? I don't know if I'd bet on it, but Sam, I'd like to see it. So that's why I wanted to bring him up first.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that there is the potential there. Like, I didn't like Quentin Johnston when I first turned to his tape. I was really low on him, and then because people like Mike Renner were like, "Nah, he's legit," and even you, top 30 player, right? There were enough people out there, and it wasn't the strongest draft class in the world, so it would have been it would have been easier to hate on it more if it was like this year, right? But a year ago, with the draft class that was there at the top, with other people really strong on him, I was like, okay, I can at least imagine this world where his strengths are played to and the stuff that he's good at works at the NFL level, right? He's able to catch those hitches, turn upfield, and run past people. I can imagine a world where that flies and you get, the same player in the NFL as you got in college. And by the way, and like an interesting wrinkle of this, Jim Harbaugh knows better than anybody what Quentin Johnston can do against a high-level NFL, or high-level defense, right? Like one of his best tapes in college was him just wrecking Michigan for a bunch of big plays when they played. So that'll be an interesting element of all this is how does Harbaugh want to use him? But I can at least see a world where it works. Like I get that there is a way of turning him into a good NFL player, but like the initial feels watching his tape weren't good. The NFL tape wasn't good so far. It's like they're starting to stack up the negatives on him. My first guy, Carl Brooks, defensive lineman now for the Green Bay Packers. I love this guy as a prospect a year ago. Weird prospect because he was like a 300-pound edge rusher. And immediately the Packers were like, okay, you're playing inside. That you're a 300-pound guy. You've got the body shape, body type of an interior player. He also had one of the worst workouts of all time in terms of statistical numbers.
Right.
But he was off the charts productive in college. And then obviously Green Bay took him after, I forget what round they drafted him in, but it was like way lower than Lucas Van Ness, who they took in the first round. And at the time, he was one of those guys where you look at the draft, and every year there's a player drafted rounds below another player at the same position that has a shot to be the better guy. And Carl Brooks was somebody that was like, don't be shocked if he's the better player than Lucas Van Ness. It certainly played that way year one. And if he continues developing the way we saw him as a rookie, dude, he could be phenomenal this year.
The Packers sort of draft these like unique multi-position, interesting tweener weight type of defensive linemen, and they just like to be very multiple along their defensive front. So Carl Brooks always made sense as a fit, and so it kind of makes sense that he would have a little bit of good play as a rookie, and you could expect him to have a little bit of a breakout here.
Just to illustrate what I was talking about as the workout numbers, right? So 6'3", 296, those are both solid numbers regardless of where you want to put them. Everything else except the bench press. So 28 reps on the bench press, that's good regardless of where you are. Everything else was below the 18th percentile, and several of them were in single digits. 20-yard shuttle was 5 seconds. That's in the first percentile. 5:08 40-yard time. We just, like, Darius Robinson was lambasted for running like a 4.95 or whatever, right? So he's like a tenth and a half slower than Darius Robinson in the 40. What else was catastrophic here? Vertical jump of 27 inches. That's awful. Fourth percentile. Like, one of the worst workouts I've ever seen, even if you say he's an interior guy, not an edge rusher. But he's just a damn good player.
And that's why he's a breakout candidate.
All right, who's your next guy?
Michael Mayer is my next guy. It's this wide receiver up there. Obviously, he's a tight end. Had 300 yards last year as a rookie, receiving yards as a rookie. Michael Mayer probably hasn't had that few of receiving yards in a single year since, like, he was a 7th grader, right? Because you go back to his time at Notre Dame, even as a freshman, he had 450 receiving yards. He had 840 and 809 the next 2 years after that as more of a mainstay on their passing game. So, like, Mayer had his lowest production year, again, like, probably since 7th grade, and, like, maybe even ever. Like, maybe he was dominating as a middle schooler as well. So I think we're in for a breakout just because of how productive this guy has been throughout his entire football journey. I understand that they drafted Brock Bowers, but I think a world can certainly exist where they're really emphasizing the tight ends in the passing game. And it's just sort of, time for him to break out. He was one of the best tight end prospects that we had in his class. He was one of the best tight ends in all of college football for 2 straight seasons. And it's not just, they drafted Brock Bowers. I guess they don't like Michael Mayer. He's going to be heavily involved in what they do in the passing game, on the line of scrimmage, as a slot receiver, that kind of stuff. So I think that we're in for a big sort of statement year and a breakout type of a year for Michael Mayer, even with Brock Bowers on the team.
Yeah, I like that. I didn't love Mayer as much as other people, but I was actually impressed by him in his rookie season, despite the numbers. My second guy, one of your favorites, Michael Wilson, the wide receiver from Arizona. I think
let's go, baby.
Now that he doesn't have to be their number one guy, now they've got Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson can just concentrate on being a really high-level number 2, a complementary piece. I think you're going to see this superstar emerge, like a guy that can be in the Devontae Smith world of, can he be an elite number 1? I'm not sure. Maybe not. But does he need to be? No. And if he can just be that number 2 guy, like now with Kyler Murray at quarterback, I think you might see Michael Wilson absolutely cook this year.
I agree. I like Mike Wilson a lot. Was a big fan of his going into that draft cycle. Thought he killed it at the Senior Bowl. And I thought the only reason why he wasn't drafted higher is because of the injury history that he had when he was at Stanford. So I like this one a lot.
Nice. Who's your next guy?
Tyreek Stevenson is somebody who I was pretty high on in the draft class last year. Liked his landing spot in Chicago. I thought he was going to get an opportunity to start right away, and he did. And he played a lot last year, and he struggled. Guess what? Because it's really tough to play corner as a rookie. And so I think he kind of learned a lot of lessons last year with a lot of snaps under his belt. But there were stretches where he started to play really, really well. Obviously got the 4 interceptions. You see the overall grade there. The coverage grade's not so great, but I can genuinely believe that there is a big second-year jump coming from him. Okay, you bring Jalen Johnson back. You now got Tyreek Stevenson. It's not just, hey, let's target the rookie on the other side. He is somebody who his tape at Miami I liked a lot more than where his consensus draft position was. I thought he was really underrated in last year's class. So he is somebody who I think could have a really good breakout year this upcoming year because of the lessons he learned as a rookie, all that experience, and the talent level I feel like he has.
Yeah, I'm torn on this one because I really didn't like Tyreek Stevenson as a prospect, but I was actually surprised and impressed by him as a rookie. In particular, I didn't think he had a good feel for zone coverage at all in college, but that was actually his better area as a rookie. So much though I'm loath to admit it, I can definitely see Stevenson having a big year this year. My third guy, Will Mallory, tight end for the Indianapolis Colts. Guy that flashed on tape when I was watching him. Like, college production isn't there. Wasn't an awful lot in terms of like his profile. But at the combine, you just saw him move really well. He tested really well. And I thought we saw enough flashes of him as a rookie to be impressed. And maybe he can carve himself a role in that Colts tight end room, which is big on like athletic freak shows that haven't actually been that great in the NFL. So I could definitely see him becoming a bigger piece of that offense and making some noise. All right, we got a couple of minutes. Let's fire through your last 2.
Okay, my last 2, I have Diane Henley who I think is going to have a chance to start at one of the linebacker spots for the Los Angeles Chargers. And I like it specifically because Jim Harbaugh, while he was at Michigan, he had like Junior Colson as the traditional like middle linebacker, bigger guy who could fit the run. But then whether it was Michael Bennett or a couple of other players who like have played that linebacker spot next to Junior Colson, they were always lighter, faster players. Like they were sometimes these like safety linebacker hybrids. And that's like what Diane Henley feels like. He is that faster, more athletic linebacker. You saw him be able to do that at Washington State. And I think that if anybody has a really good plan for how to use maybe an undersized, more speed-oriented linebacker, it's Harbaugh, because he had an exact position for that on the Michigan Wolverines defense. So I think that Henley is in for a breakout year this year as a starting linebacker for them. And then the last guy is David Ojabo. I'm going to pick a Michigan guy here because Ojabo is somebody who had a really high talent ceiling when he was coming out in his class, ended up tearing his Achilles during a workout during the draft cycle. So he really didn't get to see him much his rookie season. Last year, I think he dealt with ankle injuries, if I'm remembering correctly. So really still have not seen this guy fully healthy yet. I am really hoping that he's able to come back this year, play a majority, if not all of the season. I would love to see that from him. And if we do, I think that, he's acclimated to NFL life. He gets it. He's going to be able to pin his ears back a little bit. So Ojabo is somebody who I think people are forgetting about, but certainly with Jadeveon Clowney gone, with Kyle Minoy gone, like there are snaps to be had at that edge spot for Baltimore. And I think Ojabo is going to take one of them.
I like it. Number 4 for me, Boye Mafe for the Seahawks. I think that new defensive scheme is going to unlock a lot of those defensive players. And I actually think Mafe's really been impressing anyway. Like he looks like a guy that's on the rise, turning into a really disruptive edge rusher. I think within that new defensive scheme there in Seattle, you're going to see him really break out. And then the last guy, Leo Chenal, the linebacker for the Kansas City Chiefs. Willie Gay's moved on. I think Chenal is going to have a much bigger part of that defense. And he's like the opposite of Carl Brooks we talked about before, where instead of having the worst possible workout numbers, almost everything Chenal did in the workouts is in like the 99th percentile, right? 6'3", 250-pound linebacker who ran a 4.53 with a 1.50 10-yard split, a 41-inch vertical, 34 bench reps, a 3.94 short shuttle time, and a 6.84 three-cone time. This guy is an athletic freak show who's played pretty well in limited snaps in the NFL so far. So
he's
breakout
awesome.
season incoming for Leo.